Hello, world. It's your favorite podcast host about cryptids, Anthony Diaz here. Happy New Year and Happy Yule and Merry Christmas and all the stuff. Um, I am back. We took a little break because you have to make sure everything is fine, both physically and mentally, to make sure that you just keep doing what you want to do for fun. And this is what I want to do for fun. So yeah, um, as I'm recording this, I'm noticing that there's a little glare on my glasses into the screen, and I don't know how to correct that quickly. So I'm just going to keep that there, and it's going to be annoying for the remainder of the video. But yeah, I'm recording this on Riverside. Riverside, if you want to give me a sponsorship, that'd be fantastic. But I'm recording this on Riverside for the video that's going to be on YouTube, and then the audio, which will be on all your favorite podcast listening devices and platforms. Yeah. So what's been going on? So, um, those of you who do follow the socials, you noticed that I was in the hospital for a little over a week. Had little issues with my insides, and turns out that I'm okay now, but it's something that I have to deal with and take care of later in life. But I'm fine right now. I'm okay. I am on a weight loss track right now. Um, since I went into the hospital, I have lost let's see, about 20 pounds. And doctor's orders, they want for me to lose more, so I'm going to keep on doing this. And besides, I want to at least walk around and live to see my children be wonderful adults. So you gotta take care of yourself, right? Because I spent way too long not taking care of myself. And when I was forced to take care of myself in the military, and now that I'm like my own boss, and I don't do the things I need to do, uh, it it's catching up on you, and it it does, stack up, especially when you get older and sneaks up on you. Old age, man. Whew. But hey, this is New York. I am excited to be back recording. Um, you um, you guys get to have a wonderful new episode. Um, because when I was choosing to do New York, I couldn't decide on which one I wanted to do. So I chose four of them that I wanted to present. And uh, they are the Cardiff giant, the giant mosquito, which is the Gallinipper, sewer alligators, and then I'm not going to go into it, but Bigfoot is in New York. But like I said, from day one, no state gets to claim Bigfoot. No, Bigfoot's too heavy. He's a too heavy hitter, and I will do a Bigfoot episode. And I and I wish I can get an actual researcher and cryptozoologist on the show to ask those really like important and hard hitting questions about Bigfoot, and how they do their research, and how they um, go about, with people who want proof and who are trying to disprove the existence. I really was like, I would like someone like Lauren Coleman on the show. That'd just be amazing. And I know there are a couple of people who I follow on social media who specialize in Bigfoot. I would love to have them on the show. I think I'm going to reach out to them, very very shortly, because in 2024, this year, I'm taking things to the next level. I want to take the show um, beyond just a a off hour, hobby. Because a lot of you who also follow my socials and things like that, that my better half is, a full-time artist now, and it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for her to showcase her art, display her art, and sell her art. And it made me realize that time is very short, you know, and you put into what you put into things that you want to take out, and I want to take out a career in podcast production and video production and things like that. I got I got some really great editing software now. As you can tell, I spent the what I think it's like $7 a month, and I know it sounds like that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but like it really is. The watermark, if you can see right there, the watermark for the free split's gone because I paid for the um, subscription. Hopefully, I can get the premium package, which is a lifetime. So I get the whole bundle, which is the XSplit, the broadcaster, and all that stuff. It comes with the bundle. It gets rid of all the watermarks, and then I can start streaming. Because I would like to stream, um, like maybe Bigfoot or Mothman, Jersey Devil documentaries and do commentary while they're playing, or or stream people who want to talk about cryptids and things like that on Twitch. Just different avenues that you know you can take the message to different platforms. And of course, I want to finish editing my book. That's a slow process because when you write something as large as a novel, mine is over 87,000 words, something like that, and you kind of push it aside and you concentrate on other important things in life like family and work, even though work shouldn't be an important thing, but you have to do it to make sure the bills are paid. um, and you get back to it after you spent maybe a year not working on the novel, but you do small writings for competitions, things like that, like I have on Vocal, and you reread what you wrote, and you discover that you're just a horrible writer, and then you want to bury your head in a hole in the ground and just wish that you'd never thought you could ever be a writer in the first place. So that's where I'm at. And as I am rereading and editing my novel, my work of fiction, it does allow me to see where I started as a writer and then where I'm going as a writer, which is fascinating. The creative process. And I am also doing a show called Narrative Quest that's going to air its first episode very, very shortly. I know I've talked about it last year, talked about it for many times, but I'm committed in 2024 to bring out both shows full fledged, at least one per week, and it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work. If I can't get one per week, then two per month is ideal. Either one of each, or I'll have a random small little episode that pushes out, because Narrative Quest is going to be a whole lot easier. It's not going to be scripted or research, not scripted, research based, where I'm taking time to do the cryptid research and then like analyze it, and then shape how the show's going to be. A narrative quest is just going to be me and somebody else talking with a conversation about the creative process and how the artist or the musician or the writer, the poet, what have you, it comes up with their creations. And that's going to be a huge thing for me starting in 2024, because I'm going to start my own LLC. And it's going to be Alpha Line Productions, where I'm going to house all of my shows into one thing, and I'm going to make this a business, because that's what excuse me, that's the next step. The next step is making this financially a business. I would love to be like in the top 50 of you know successful podcasts or successful shows. Because I look at people like Markiplier and Bob Wade, Jacksepticeye, and things like that, and what they do is amazing. It takes a lot of work, and it is a full-time job. But the idea of just being creative all the time and then making money being creative, that's my jam. That's what I want to do. Even even if it's scoring a small little gig somewhere and DMing a Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder game and airing it on YouTube, and I'll house that under my LLC. Just being creative is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and I know I've talked about that before, but I am adamant now, especially being in the hospital, that I really do want to just be creative and make stories and make horror stories, make funny stories, make fantasy stories. Um, I haven't dived into romance yet, but I think I can. I can make something spicy. Yeah, so that's what's going on. But let's get right into it. Let's get into New York, New York, New York, New York, the Empire State. Let's get some facts about New York first. Settled in 1624 and named after James, Duke of York, its capital is Albany. Current New York City is made of 5 boroughs. And I didn't know this. I didn't know there were 5 boroughs that made up New York. I thought it was just New York and like, okay, this section is called Bronx or Brooklyn. But no, they're 5 boroughs. It is Bronx, Kings, which is Brooklyn, New York, which is Manhattan, Queens, and Richmond, which is Staten Island. The earliest inhabitants is speaking um, Iroquois speaking indigenous peoples. The Algonquian speaking tribes were dominant during the European push into the North Americas. Also in the area were the Seneca, the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onagata. I'm hopefully I'm pronouncing some of this right. The Cayuga tribes were present in the northern side of the state, whereas the Lenni, the Lenape, the Mehagan, the Wappinger, to name a few, resided on the coastline of New York. So they had these different tribes that are in the New York area. Um, and this was obviously prior to the European push inward. You see, New York was such a pivotal in immigration that 11 different languages could be found in New York City alone, and the language list is phenomenal. It's amazing how culturally packed in so many different cultures, and with them come the languages. I mean, I do follow this guy on YouTube. Um, I think his name is Zalman. He's a linguist. He's some dude that learns languages extremely quickly, and then will go and impress people of that culture, of that language in their native tongue. I think he studied abroad in China. That's when he learned Chinese, and his wife is Chinese as well. Excuse me. Yeah, so that's unbelievable. It's fascinating. I don't speak another language. I wish I did. I barely speak English. um, I would love to get back into Spanish. I spoke Spanish when I was a kid. I was very tiny kid, and it was broken Spanish at best, but I could understand it and speak it a little bit. Um, and then got back into it during high school and college, and then never spoke it because I never needed to speak Spanish, and now I'm regretting never going full deep into it to be a fluent native speaker, especially now because I could use that in my job, and some places will pay extra if you know another language. So yeah, little tear. I wish I wish I had kept up with it. Let's see. Oh man, my throat. As my voice, by the way, it sounds this way because last night, yesterday, it went a little too hard with the Cowboy Redskin game. Uh, the family is split because I'm both. I'm a Redskin and Cowboy fan, and they played yesterday, so uh, yelling and screaming at the TV, and the voice gets a little hoarse, and I think I sound pretty decent. I wish I sounded like this all the time, but yeah, here we go. So the first Europeans to reach this land was Giovanni de Verrazzano in 1524, and Jacques Cartier in 1535, but didn't settle nor colonize unlike Henry Hudson, while employed by the Dutch, and that is the Dutch East India Company in 1609. Under this direct intention of colonization, the first European settlement was built in 1614 at Fort Nassau as a trading post for the fur trade. And we can already assume that tensions between indigenous and the Europeans were climbing at this point because of the settlement wars that were about to pop up in the near future. And they're going to pop up very quickly. Under the settlement of the Dutch, more Dutch arrived and eventually called this area New Netherland around 1624. Modern day New York was named New Amsterdam. Enter now surrounding colonies claimed unrightfully so, obviously, by the English and French. The Anglo Dutch Wars began to switch the sides of who claimed modern day New York under Dutch or English power because they just kept on fighting each other. When the English won, New Amsterdam was switched into New York. When the Dutch won again, it was named New Orange in 1673, and it lasted 1 year before the English won it back with another war victory. It was at this time when the French, which were colonized West 13 pre revolution colonies and into modern day Canada, began to push Catholicism and partnering trade alliances with native indigenous peoples, which did not sit well with the neighboring colonies and kicked the French and Indian War off, and it ended in 1763. Indigenous peoples were practically thrown into this war, fighting on either side. So they didn't have a choice. Um, what is interesting is that the majority of the fighting for much of these conflicts were done in New York. The dynamic that New York possesses is almost a curse or a destiny. Either way you look at it, New York has become a central hub for the entire world. And that's very, very true. There's so much history that resides directly in the New York State. Um, and I'm not even talking about New York, New York, New York. I'm talking about the state, the entire state. It was a central hub for a lot of things going on during all these wars. Especially during the American Revolution. It. I believe at one point, I think New York housed the White House. I can't remember. I didn't see that in my research, but I think that's right. I don't know. I have to check. I'll make sure to check. Put it in the end of the video. Okay, let's get to the first cryptid, the Cardiff giant. Okay, uncovered on October 16th, 1869, in Cardiff, New York, on the land owned by a man named William C. Stubb Newell. Workers were building a new well, and they discovered a 10-foot tall, nearly 3,000-pound petrified man. News traveled fast, and a surprisingly large amount of people came to see the dug up figure. It became so popular that P.T. Barnum offered $50,000 for it. Now, before we go any further, all of my native New Yorkers out there who are listening to the show, and you're screaming at the radio, at your phone, or in the ether, that you already know that this was a hoax, that the Cardiff Giant was staged. But I love this story so much, I'm going to keep on going. So this story begins in Iowa, where a man named George Hull was visiting a relative. He got into an argument, a debate of some sorts about the existence of giants. Uh, as one does in mid 1800s in Iowa. And if you remember our episode on giants, I am a firm believer in giants because I think they're cool. I I I have a couple of hardcore theories on giants, but yeah, listen to that episode. Listen to the episode on giants. It was I think it was one of my top listens. I think so. So Hull was discussing this topic with the preacher and pastor, and specifically, as this story goes, brings up Genesis 6:4. Hull was an atheist, and with a room full of people who are not on your side with the argument, it immediately went south for Hull. But Hull decided that at one point he wanted to prove something. He wanted to prove how gullible people were and how quickly they would believe a giant could be unearthed. So that's exactly what he did. He hired a guy named H.B. Martin to dig out some gypsum, and I think gypsum is a certain type of rock, and paid another man named Edward Burgert, Henry Sailly, and Fred Moman to sculpt and create the giant. So he got one guy to go carve out rock, and he paid three individuals to carve and to sculpt the figure, the petrified giant. Great lengths were taken to keep this a secret. Now, one, to keep this a secret, he had to transport the sculpture to New York, then bury it a year to have it dug up by New Orleans workers Gideon Emmons and Henry Nichols in 1869. Now, we know this was a hoax, and it was revealed and proven to be a hoax after Hull was paid a lot of money for the rights. And the rights, what I meant by the rights is the rights to see it, because it was on tour, and it would people would pay money to go to see this giant. Hull later said that he did it to expose people within the Christian community as being easily swayed. Let's see. Sorry. I was reading my notes. After explanation on why this is important into the crypto world, this goes into the verification, substance, the facts, the exploration, and or not exploitation of how you research and discover cryptids. This was a prominent case that that a lot of cryptozoologists, I believe, use as substance. Like this is what you're supposed to do when you are when you're debunking or researching these creatures, these cryptids. Because one of the individuals who also declared this as a hoax was I think an anthropologist who did research on this thing. And was like, there's no way this could be a petrified man. And yeah, so this goes into the scientific research into cryptids, and that's why I love this story so much. Unfortunately, we know that is a hoax. Next is the giant mosquito, the Gallinipper. So this is what makes New York such a fun state to do cryptids in, because let us start with the macro and then work our way into the micro for giant mosquitoes. Are there reports of giant mosquitoes? Yes. One report I found originated from Florida, and reports came in from all along the East Coast to include New York of unusually large mosquitoes emerging in 2013, and these things were massive. These mosquitoes, which were being known as Gallinippers, were up to 20 times the size of a regular mosquito. And a Gallinipper is a cryptid that comes from African American folktales, which makes this interesting, having usage of a cryptid name to call modern day large mosquitoes. So they used a cryptid name, a folklore name, to name these abnormally, unusually large mosquitoes. Now, this isn't the first cryptid story about large insects, especially mosquitoes. Indigenous tribes such as Cherokee and the Iroquois described insects as large as hawks, or sometimes a man called the Ro Teyo. These stories originate around 500 CE. excuse me, 500 CE. Let me get my voice right, working right. Now we know that large insects did exist in prehistoric times, such as dragonflies. Um, the Manigua were a genus of instinct insects that grew upwards of having a 3 foot wingspan and a large body to match. The controversy around these insects is the school of thought of how it could have grown to that size. Was it oxygen or atmospheric density or lack of predators? We know from previous episodes that this was a contributing factor for other prehistoric species, the lack of predators. Or did it have to do with something about being in the water during the larvae stage or have some time spent on water before becoming terrestrial? Either way, they roamed the earth. We know they roamed the earth, and it must have been extremely terrifying. That's Jumanji type size. um, but with that being said, we can take a species of mosquitoes known as, I'm going to butcher the scientific name too, Tuxohytrichites, or the elephant mosquito. Now, compared to its regular old mosquito cousin, this thing is massive and doesn't consume blood. So we know that this exists, but stories such as this came out in 1855 from a lumber worker named Red Sanders, who reportedly got stung by a giant mosquito, leading to more immigrants sharing stories about seeing bird-sized mosquitoes. So in 1855, just to recap, in 1855, this lumber worker, claimed to have gotten bitten by a giant mosquito. And out of that story, more immigrants were saying that they were seeing large bird-sized mosquitoes. Now, can people get other large insects confused with mosquitoes, such as a crane fly? Sure. If you look at the picture of a crane fly and look at a mosquito, they almost look the same. But a crane fly is almost the size of a hand. They almost look similar, like I said. And unless you really stop to look at the crane fly, at first detection, it would seem like a very large mosquito. And again, if you look at it, it's scary as hell because it is the size of your hand. But let's discuss the plausibility of what we have so far. The Cardiff giant, if you look at the pictures of the petrified man, it doesn't necessarily look like a petrified person would look like, let's say, from the Pompeii volcano eruption. It looks blocky and sculpted, but that may just what it looks like, now. That just may be what it just looks like out of natural deterioration. But perhaps it had a real defining feature to resemble a giant man. It might have been more believable. And we know that this was admitted as a hoax, but this doesn't necessarily dismiss the existence of giants or modern day world's tallest people. And I love the idea of giants roaming the earth. I really do. How about the giant mosquitoes? Okay, well, folklore about these Gallinippers, it's amazing. You read the stories about the Gallinipper, they are described as large bird size. I'm talking about like pelican size mosquitoes. I have never been to New York long enough to notice any insects. I've been to New York maybe a handful of times. Well, maybe less than a handful of times, maybe like once or twice when I was a kid. And I did see a ginormous rat. But when it comes to insects and mosquitoes, I don't remember seeing any abnormally large ones. But we know that there have been unusually large mosquitoes that have been reported and pictured and identified in Florida. But I too do love the size, not the size, the idea of Jumanji sized mosquitoes or a Fallout sized mosquito flying around New York City skylines. I love it. I love it. But what does that say about the cryptid itself, the giant mosquito, the Gallinipper? Well, I mean, if you were to take any mosquito that you see, like in your normal day life, and you were to notice if you were to go to Florida in 2013 when they discovered this giant thing, and you were walking around and this, I believe it's this almost the size of a pill cap, a pill bottle cap, so a little larger than a $half. If you see that thing just land on your hand, it's gonna freak you out. That's a very very big mosquito. Now, uh, do I think do I think that there were very like bird-sized mosquitoes that are still roaming around? I would love to think that there are just they're up there in the skylines and no one sees them because they're chilling, flat to the side of a mountain that or side of a skyscraper that nobody sees. Uh, that's just me. All right, let's get into the next one, the final one. Sewer alligators. So, sewer alligators is not a cryptid per se, mainly because it's just a story about people flushing their illegal pet alligators down the toilet in New York City. And said alligator wanders around the sewers until it reaches an open gate, then finds a home somewhere along the coastline. This is more urban legend than it is cryptid, but one version of the story nudges into the realm of cryptids, and that's a giant albino mutant gator living in New York sewers. I fucking love this. This is so great. So the story originates around 1920s, where people would claim to see alligator sightings at locations around New York City. Story says that vacationers traveling outside of the city, somewhere like Florida, would bring home baby alligators as pets. They would get too large to take care of in New York apartments, and then get flushed or dropped down the sewer line or drainage systems. The gators would survive for as long as they could, or sometimes reproduce, and people would say they spotted the sewer gator, on their day to day lives. So you have people who are walking, to work or walking to their commune or whatever, and they would see a beady little alligator eye in the sewer grates. That would scare the living crap out of me. There is one proven instance of a baby alligator being caught in Queens in 2010. Many believe it would not have survived reaching the fall or winter months, but I mean, how did it get there? Uh, was this one of the few survivors of sewer alligators? This is what makes this cryptid so special. It is believable and fairly plausible to a degree. Alligators are cold-blooded and regulate their body temperatures with the sun's rays. Anything below 70 degrees, the alligator becomes dormant and slows their metabolism to conserve energy, leaving them very vulnerable. So the likelihood of them surviving a New York winter is very, very, very slim. Very slim. So enter the mutant hybrid sewer alligator. This story includes the chemicals and other factors that float in New York's sewers that make the alligator evolve at an alarming pace, and it becomes this huge, monstrous creature underneath the city streets of the Big Apple. Yeah, I like that one. That's cool. So you got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where you got a mutant albino alligator roaming around the New York City streets. Oh, excuse me. Um, and then finally, Bigfoot. Now, again, we're not getting into Bigfoot. No, no, we're not. I would love to. But like I said, no state gets to claim Bigfoot. Bigfoot's going to be its own thing. It's probably going to be a two-parter. Like I said, I want to bring an investigator, a cryptozoologist on the show and talk about Bigfoot. Um, but New York is one of those states that claims to see and spot the big fella, and I love the fact that it spreads from Washington State all the way up to New York, Maine, Vermont, all those areas. I absolutely love it. Um, and the sightings are heavy, and it's a one of those creatures that are I think in my research for New York was like every other year there's some type of either video or picture. Uh obviously it's nothing as famous as the Patterson video. But I love the fact that people are out there looking for Bigfoot. Is phenomenal in New York itself. I think I think the sightings are going more upstate New York and going into the Great Lakes area, not in the coastline. And yeah, that's uh, Bigfoot, man. One of these days, I'm gonna go camping for like a month and try to find that thing. So yeah, let's rate the cryptids for New York. The Cardiff giant, the giant mosquitoes, sewer alligators, and then I'm gonna leave Bigfoot out because that's not fair. I think I think this is a fantastic state to dive into different cryptids. I'm gonna give the whole thing a 4 to 5. It's a fantastic group of stories, and the more plausible ones are obviously the giant mosquitoes and then the sewer alligator. I personally love the sewer alligator one. Just it's just that creepy underneath the city streets vibe that a mutant albino alligator would terrorize the citizens of New York. Um, I I love it. I absolutely love it. So yeah, um, that's today's show. Thank you again for listening to 50 States of Terror, and you can find us all on all of your podcast favorite platforms. Stay tuned for some social shout outs and and yeah, thank you for all your support. I really do appreciate it, and I hope 2024 comes with the bang because we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have fun with this, and yeah, later.